Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Student Mental Health Mini Town Hall Forum. My name is Jim Rush. I'm the Vice President, Academic, and Provost of the University of Waterloo, and I am honored to have been asked to serve as your host for today's important event. We'd like to begin by acknowledging that the University of Waterloo is located on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples, and that the University of Waterloo is situated on the Haldimand Tract, the land promised to the Six Nations that includes 10 kilometers on each side of the Grand River. With respect to the event today, I'd like to begin by welcoming and thanking our speakers, President Feridun Hamdulapur, Dr. Walter Mittelstadt, Director of Campus Wellness, Professor John Hurdes, Chair of the President's Advisory on the Committee on Student Mental Health, and our student representatives from the committee, Ayana Kawe and Megan Crouch. In addition, I'd like to welcome all the members of the President's Advisory Committee on Student Mental Health and on the Committee of the Implementation Committee for the Student Mental Health Initiative. And finally, and not least of which, I'd like to thank you all, members of the community, students, faculty, staff, and other community members who have taken the time to attend today to take part in this important discussion on student mental health. So welcome, everyone. The last Student Mental Health Forum was held earlier this year in March, during which the Advisory Committee presented its final report of 36 recommendations to address student mental health and well-being. The university took and takes these recommendations very seriously, and through the formation of the Committee of Student Mental Health and what we call the Implementation Committee, continues to make achieving those recommendations a top priority. Since May, the committee has met monthly, and as of today, 44% of the recommendations are either in progress or have been completed. This has included increasing our investment in mental health by $1.2 million, funding that is being used to add additional counseling and support staff, supporting increased mental health training for counseling staff, for faculty and staff, to assist students in distress, and to help educate students on what services are available and how to access them. Our work on this absolutely critical issue of student mental health continues, and today we're very pleased to carry on that conversation in this open forum. You'll hear from our speakers today about some of the important steps that the university has taken to address the committee's recommendations. We will then move on to a brief question and answer period, and following that, we invite you all to participate in the open house portion of the event to engage in one-on-one dialogue with committee members and stakeholder groups. More details on that a little bit later. But now, I would like to invite Waterloo's President and Vice Chancellor, Feridun Hamdulapur, to the stage to provide his remarks on the university's progress thus far and to share his perspective as we continue to take action. Feridun.
Thanks very much, Jim, and good afternoon, everybody. First, let me echo Jim's words of thanks for being here. It means a lot that you're here. You took the time to be here to enter into this conversation. We wanted to have this town hall because we wanted to share with everybody that we are taking this very seriously, student mental health, but at the same time, again, continue our conversation with you. We've always taken student mental health very seriously, and we thought we were doing a good job in doing a number of things until about a year and a half ago that our campus got really shaken by 2 suicides. Up until that moment, I and my colleagues were under some sort of impression that if we kind of contain student suicides, it will be better for our student body, and we will prevent some others following suit. We didn't mean to try to hide the facts that resulted in that very, very unfortunate events, but at the same time, the campus reaction was unbelievably impactful. The whole campus came together and said, well, we need to look at this a little bit closer. We need to look at this differently. We need to make sure that this is one of our top agenda items. And at that time, there was absolutely no hesitation whatsoever to start, despite our progress, to start something new, and that was the Committee on Student Health, Mental Health. They did a fantastic job. They worked tirelessly. Everybody was there because they cared. It was a challenge to tell some people that, sorry, we really, really appreciate your offer to participate, but we really have the full committee membership here. But we welcome everybody's input. And I think that was one of the most comprehensive undertakings that we had in terms of student mental health. They did a fabulous job in the shortest time available to them, because we also recognize that even though we could have used more time and more consultations, more input, this matter could not wait. We needed to act. We needed to bring some very important actionable items, and so did they. Came up with a set of recommendations that from day one we thought we needed to work on them. Mental health is something that is there. There's no denial of it. I talk to a lot of people who say, well, when I was a student, said, let's push them away. We live here, this day and age. There are a number of things that we are either, we have them or they become a problem, issue, and we have to create an environment at this university that truly understands and acknowledges mental health. And we need to provide an environment within which everybody will feel that they're not alone. They are supported, and we can help them as best as we can, either to deal with it, to be able to successfully continue their studies, or bring additional help for them. We don't want to be in an environment that students will feel alone. Students will feel helpless. Students will think that nobody cares. This is the environment that we are continuing to build, that we care a lot. It's not just your performance in your classes, courses, your marks. We care about you as a whole person. And that's the reason why the Student Mental Health Committee worked tirelessly to come up with the set of recommendations that recognize all of these. So today, this is part of, again, our communication with our campus community, that we've been working on it. As Jim mentioned, 44%. I wish I could have said, well, 100% of the recommendations have been implemented, but there are a whole bunch of recommendations, and we needed to go back and prioritize them and say, well, how can we start? I'm very glad that we're not at 5% or 10%, it's at 44%, and numbers don't mean a lot, but what's the impact of this? Today also is a very proud moment for myself and for our university and for my colleagues, that we're going to sign the Okanagan Charter. This was one of the recommendations of the committee, and I'm very proud that today we will join other institutions who recognize the importance of this charter. It's simple. It's saying that be committed to look at everything, whatever you're doing at the university, you're planning, you're assessing, put your student mental health lens on. And once we do this, we see things differently. We are able to walk in the shoes of those who've been walking in those shoes, and understand that this university can be extremely, extremely at a high level. Our excellence is important to us. It means something. Our differentiation is important to us. It means something. It makes a difference. But at the same time, this doesn't have to be at the expense of health, well-being, and especially mental health of our members, and especially our students. That's the reason why I'm so proud that we will be able to sign this. I'm also a very proud member of this community, because you all, thousands and thousands of our members, students, staff, faculty, you showed it abundantly clear that you cared a lot, you wanted to be part of the solution. You wanted to be part of creating this environment, and I couldn't be more proud. So thank you so much for being here, and we will continue our conversation. We will continue letting know of our progress. We are doing this. We have come this far along because you have helped. You've participated. You have been part of this. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ferdinand, for sharing your insights and your obvious passion for this initiative, and which has really propelled the multiple stages of it. So we're very, very thankful for that and for your support. I'd like now to introduce Professor John Hurdies from the University of Waterloo School of Public Health and Health Systems. As Ferdinand mentioned, one of the outcomes of the initial President's Advisory Committee on Student Mental Health activities and consultations was to produce a report that contained a number of recommendations. It was abundantly clear that what had to happen next was that those recommendations had to be prioritized for impact and an implementation plan put around those as a framework for how this university would move forward on this issue. It was at that point that Professor Hurdies was recruited into the position of chairing the Committee on Student Mental Health with that implementation agenda. And so I'd like to welcome Professor John Hurdies to tell us a little bit about the activities of that committee and where we are today.
Thank you very much, Jim. It's great to be here today and see such a good crowd with us today. My engagement in the Committee on Student Mental Health started formally in March of this year. It was a Sunday morning. I was coming home from playing a tennis match that I always play on Sunday mornings with friends I've been playing with for a very long time. And I opened my email and I saw this message from the president of the University of Waterloo, and I thought, that's unusual. He doesn't usually send out messages to the campus on Sunday mornings. So I opened it up and it started, "Dear John." And I realized, okay, this is going to be a bit different. So that's when he raised the offer to me to take the role of chair of the Committee on Student Mental Health, and I very gratefully accepted that honor and opportunity. Mental health has been very important for me. At least the last 20 years of my research career have been devoted to focusing on mental health issues, and I can also say that I have lived experience with mental health going back to my family history as a child, so it's important both personally and academically to me. So it's something that I think it's great to see such important leadership in the university in tackling this matter head on, so that we can do the best that we can for all members of our campus community. I've been very heartened and grateful for the fantastic support that we've gotten from across the campus in terms of the stakeholder participation in the Committee on Student Mental Health, or COSM. We've been active since that March date, getting the committee together. So I'm the chair for the committee. We have great representation from the student body. Ayana Kawe, who you'll hear from today, represents international students. Katie Arnold is an undergraduate student at large. She's the president of the Engineering Society. Megan Crouch is a graduate student at large on the committee. She's a PhD student in School of Public Health and Health Systems. Naima Samuels is the president of the Graduate Student Association, and Richard Wu, the president of the Federation of Students. So very strong representation from the student body in a variety of different capacity, and we have great membership there, and their voices are very important in our committee. From the university leadership, Chris Reed, the Associate Provost for Students, participates, and Walter Mittelstadt, who you'll hear from, the Director of Campus Wellness, is an important partner on the committee as well. Each of the faculties are represented. So Bill Chesney represents arts, Chris Perlman from Applied Health Sciences. Chris played a very active role in the President's Advisory Committee on Student Mental Health, Dan Brown from Math, and Aaron O'Connell from Environmental Studies. Peter Douglas representing Engineering, and Tej Tejal Patel from science. She's at the School of Pharmacy. So solid representation from all the faculties. We have staff members as well from Counseling Services, Sherry Billets and Domenica DeBilio from Co-op. We have an alumni member, Doug Ranton. Doug is active on the Waterloo Region Committee for Suicide Prevention. And then an external partner, Brooke Young, representing the Community Mental Health Association, because it's important for us to be part of a broader mental health system that the university can connect with. So I think you can say there's great representation of all the major stakeholders that should be thinking about matters related to student mental health, and it's a very active and solid committee to help us move through this implementation phase. So we are able to do our work because we have solid resources allocated from the university to do this. We have 3 staff positions to support it. Grace Wong is a project coordinator for this Committee on Student Mental Health. Patrick Yu is a co-op student helping us on all matters related to the activities of this committee. And then Jerica Little is a PhD student who's also doing her dissertation work on student mental health. We meet on a monthly basis, and then we have an executive committee who meets in between those meetings to keep things moving along. Our terms of reference and membership were finalized early on in spring. They're available online if you'd like to take a look at those terms of membership. We then engaged in a process to think about how we're going to tackle all 36 recommendations. The commitment is that we will implement all 36 recommendations, but we got to do this in a manageable order and that we can get it all done. And so we went through a multi-stage process to prioritize which recommendations we were going to do first, second, third, and so on. And when you go to the atrium, you'll see the priority order that we established for the committee. We're always willing to take more feedback to move things further up in the priority list if you feel that there's something that needs more urgent attention than where it appears on that list. So do take a look at it and give us that feedback if you like. We have a small executive committee that helps sort of keep things moving along when we have sort of operational issues to deal with in between meetings. And our students have been trained for media relations, and a couple of students are acting as spokespersons if we need to do any public releases from the student perspective. We've also worked very closely with Campus Wellness to establish a joint communication strategy so that we're organized between what Campus Wellness is doing and what COSM is doing on a larger scale basis to implement all these recommendations. And so we're working hand in hand to be sure that we get these recommendations implemented in a timely and appropriate manner. As the President said, we're about 44% of the way in terms of getting started on these recommendations, and we fully expect to be there in terms of 100% implemented by the end of our 2-year mandate. Today is an important day because of the implementation or the adoption of the Okanagan Charter. As we heard earlier, that is one of the key recommendations. It's a statement of principles that we'll adhere to ourselves in terms of how we value mental health and act on it as a campus community, but it also engages us with a broader community of universities that are committed to working on student health and wellness, and we'll add a particular mental health lens to that. There's a new website that's up with a dashboard, so you can log on and you can see what's happening in terms of progress on these recommendations to see what we're working on today and what recommendations are completed. We'll use that as one mechanism of transparency and communication. We're also working with various campus partners to think about future recommendations that we'll be working on to see what are things that others have already begun to work on, and how do we collaborate with those partners to be sure that we get started on those future recommendations. We've been asked to connect with the Canadian Standards Association and the Mental Health Commission of Canada to contribute our ideas to student mental health and setting standards that post-secondary institutions can use for evaluating their performance advance in terms of student mental health. So that's an exciting initiative because we'll be able to make a national contribution to thought on that particular issue. They were quite keen to have University of Waterloo engaged because in their view, the work that the university was doing was leading edge in terms of the national picture for what other universities were doing on mental health. So in the next year and a half, we'll get going on those remaining 56% of the recommendations. We do have a feedback mechanism that will be available on the website. So do go to the COSM website, take a look at the recommendations, give us your 2 cents on what you think about each of those recommendations, and feel free to make any other comments that you think could be helpful to us in meeting the goals of our program of work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John, and I'm sure that the entire university community would like to pass on their thanks to you in the leadership role and to the entire Committee on Student Mental Health, the members of whom were articulated on the slides earlier and many of who I see in the audience today, for your fine work in helping construct the path forward on this issue. We're going to hear from a couple of other members of the committee now, just preceding the Okanagan Charter signing ceremony, the question and answer period, and then the opportunity to interact with committee members in the atrium. And we're going to start with Dr. Walter Mittelstadt, the Director of Campus Wellness. So I'd invite Walter to come up and share a few remarks.
Good to see everybody here. Good to see a good and interested crowd as we have for a lot of these events in the last year. Interested in this topic. I just sitting here was reflecting on the March 14th event and the tremendous engagement that we experienced, knowing that we were on the right track by shining the light on this area, and since then it's been no letdown in terms of interest. So what I would like to do today is just tell you about some meaningful actions, things you might have heard about. So I'm not going to go through 36 recommendations, but just to let you know the impact that this process has had on the work that's going on in campus. If you recall in the report, we organized the actions and the recommendations into these categories. I'm going to highlight it on the top shaded ones, on service, on prevention and early intervention, and mental health awareness. These bottom two, the campus culture and policies, a lot of thinking going on, but these are the ones that we know are going to take some time to really establish the right partners and the right processes to get going. So in terms of increased resources, I think we were able to report the additional funding that was received through the Student Services Advisory Committee in the Provost's office early in this year. I'm happy to report that all of these positions have been filled by counseling services. And in fact, I'm happy to see a bunch of the counseling services staff here, maybe some of the ones who occupied the new positions. So we have 5.5 additional counselors, additional intake specialists, and a clinical case manager who have all joined the campus wellness team and hired in September. In addition, you'll notice in the report that there's a lot of talk about health promotion, and when we get to talking about the Okanagan Charter, we see how our attention is really moving into the area of health promotion, what some people might call upstream activities, creating the kind of culture, creating the information that are conducive to health and wellness. So to that end, we were able to beginning to build a strong health promotion team, and you'll be hearing a lot from them over the coming years. One of the recommendations, I'm not going to go in detail on this, talks about a stepped care model. And naturally, the things we hear a lot, and the counseling staff and Tom and Sherry and the leadership team there hear a lot, is about people waiting for counseling services, in particular for one-to-one counseling. What the group is working on very actively is to think about all the different steps leading up to that most intense intervention, and making sure that we have all those steps available in our service continuum. And I'm happy to report that these are all the different things you might find yourself getting into if you go into that counseling services stream. If we talk right from the very beginning, just getting information out, making sure people have the right information about mental health, being able to ask themselves, how am I doing? Do I need to go in for a more intensive look at things? And then a very robust intake system that has been developed where we make sure that everybody gets seen when they come to, or when they make that call, and the appropriate decision gets made about what help they need. Moving into various kinds of workshops that are available, and I'm going to talk a bit about that. A lot of work done in the last couple of years on walk-in and single session on Wednesdays and Thursdays, where virtually you can walk into the counseling center and get time with a counselor on the spot. And as well, a more scheduled single session approach, which is all part of the important continuum. And then we get to the more traditional intervention approaches, including group counseling, individual counseling, medical care. We have a lot of physicians and nurse practitioners providing mental health services, and then psychiatric care. A new thing for us that we have moved in, and pleased to say that we have actually initiated the complex care team. There are some individuals on campus who require that extra level of care and coordination of care, and we've been talking about this for some years and have established this team under the leadership of the senior psychiatrist. You might have seen this floating around. These are a number of documents that have been produced in the last 6 months. I give a lot of credit to Alyssa Clarkson, Communication Project Manager, for setting this motion in place. So this is resources for faculty and staff. This is what people were asking during the PAC SMH time. There's a number of other printed materials that are out there. Hopefully you're taking advantage of it, and feel free to pick up some of these materials at the booth over in the atrium afterwards. But an important piece, people were asking, just tell us what's available, how to get there, what should we be doing on the spot if someone is approaching us in distress. Mental health training is another strong focus in the PAC SMH recommendations, and a lot of work has gone on prior to the report and since that. One important piece was to conduct a situational analysis about the training. So we recognize that there's a lot of training going on campus, but through this analysis, recognizing it's not always coordinated and it's not always obvious to recipients about what is the most important piece of training that they should be going after. So this is the effort that's been put into mental health training. And just to give you a quick snapshot on what actually has been done since January in training. So these are number of individuals. The Safe Talk seminars have had 40. Mental health first aid, we've had 105 participants. More Feet on the Ground, which is a shorter presentation involving some online resources, has had 437 participants. This is mainly staff and faculty. And QPR, which is question, persuade, and refer, an approach to help people with those individual interaction, has been taken by 484. So all in this year, we've had over 1,000 people trained since January in these various mental health modules. And then we have a whole other set of training that is directly for students to helping them with skills, coping skills we call it, and a very active area within counseling. We've had over 1,700 trained. So nobody's stopped. We keep going while we're doing reports and implementation. There's a lot of good work happening, and I thank those who are doing the work, and I thank those who are participating and interested.
Yeah, thanks very much, Walter, for that overview of some of the activities. And we wanted to make sure to have the opportunity to hear from the perspective of some of the student members of the COSM as well. So in that light, I'm very pleased to welcome Ayana Kawe to come forward, an undergraduate student representative from the COSM, to share a few perspectives of his own. Thank you, Ayana.
Alrighty. It's nice to see everyone here. Thanks for attending. It's just happy to, for me, in my eyes, it's a testament to how important we all hold mental health and how serious we consider it that we were able to pack a auditorium full of people here. So again, appreciate everyone coming. And I just thought I'd tell a story to start off my speech here. So back in high school, I had a physics teacher who was a really interesting character. You know, he was buddy-buddy with Stephen Hawking. He did a PhD at Berkeley and has an observatorium in his backyard for looking at the stars. So, interesting guy. But yeah, in our grade 12 physics class, he told us a really piece of advice to listen and to take heed of once we get to university. He told us, don't go through it alone. So once you get to university, the challenge of school and classes and all that burden, don't try and take that on your own. Find a group of friends, classmates, peers, who you can share the load with and you can collaborate with and who can help each other through the struggle and the challenge that university is. So I got to my first year and thankfully I took heed of his advice. His advice helped me through my first year physics classes and calc classes, and I don't know if I would have done as well had I not found a good group of peers to support me as well. So that advice was useful for school and it was useful for academics, but I thought to myself, this sentence, don't go through it alone, it applies to more than just classes. It applies to more, it could apply to your social well-being, it could apply to your mental health as well. And as I spent more years in my undergrad here, I came to realize through my own experiences, through the experiences of my peers, that whether it's a minor bump in the road or whether it's a serious mental health crisis, you really shouldn't have to go through these things on your own. It really is incredibly valuable to have a group, a support network, people to rely on to help you go through the challenges you face in life. So I was really relieved to see through my time at Waterloo that there are a lot of individuals and groups on campus who are invested, who are interested in making sure that students get the support that they need. So whatever challenges they go through, they don't face it alone. So I could just mention a few groups that are doing really admirable work. The international peer community on campus is available for international students to come and find a community of people who are going through the same challenges as them and to make new friends. We have counseling services on campus, as some of our previous speakers have mentioned. You can drop in or you can book an appointment, and they're really providing key critical services for students. If you're interested in taking care of your physical health, UW has a workout buddy program, so you can sign up and find a buddy who you can go to the gym with and stay motivated together. If you don't feel like going, they can push you to show up to the gym. And even for spiritually inclined students, we have resources on campus for them, whether it's prayer rooms. We have a chaplains association, actually, so different faith representatives, different chaplains from different faith groups can provide services and one-on-one sessions with students. And I guess even keeping with UW's spirit of innovation, some friends of mine and I, with the help of the Muslim Student Association, actually started a nonprofit to help support and complement the mental health services on campus. So we started something called the Muslim Chaplaincy of Waterloo, and we're aiming to provide students with the resources and spiritually inclined students with the resources and the support to have the tools to develop resiliency and tackle the challenges they face in life. So another group I think is worth mentioning, and it's the reason why we're here, is the Co-SMH. It was made at the request of our president, Faroudin Hamdullahpour, and again, it has different representatives from different groups on campus who come together and collaborate to help guide the work we're doing in trying to improve student mental health on campus. For me personally, I serve as the international student representative on campus, so I'm the voice for international students and even for students who might be Canadian-born but have an international background, whether it comes to their ethnicity or their culture or their faith. So I'm humbled and honored, and it's my pleasure to serve as a voice for these students. And for me personally, it's just been really wonderful to see the value placed in the voice of students. Students from, whether it's from the committee or from outside the committee, their voice is given a whole lot of value. It's given a lot of weight in terms of the decisions that we make. And because in the end, the work that we're trying to do is trying to benefit students. So to have students' input in telling us where we need to divert our efforts and divert our resources really is beneficial for our end goal. And looking at where we are, we're at an exciting stage. As our previous speakers mentioned, we have 44% of the recommendations completed or underway already. And my own personal observation is that, with the group of committed and driven and passionate individuals we have on the Committee of Student Mental Health and working adjacently with the committee, I think we have a bright future in terms of the growth that our mental health support services on campus will see, and just in terms of the developing of the University of Waterloo community. So I just want to say thanks again, and it's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much, Ayana, for that powerful message, attesting to the power of community and the principle of not facing these challenges alone, made even more poignant by you sharing, you frankly sharing your own personal stories. I'd like to invite Megan Crouch to come forward. Megan is a graduate student, a member of the COSMH, and would be delighted to hear some of her reflections as well.
Thanks, everyone. I was hoping I'd get a chance to print these out, but I'll go high tech and try and bear with me if I don't lose my screen. So my name is Megan Crouch, and I'm a PhD student in public health and health systems, and my job is I'm acting as the graduate student at large on this implementation committee. And this topic, student mental health, is something very personal to me. As someone with mental illness and addiction issues, now in recovery, I understand the sensitivity of this topic and the associated stigma that can be coming along with such issues. To speak authentically about myself today is something that has taken time. So does creating an environment where individuals can speak freely and openly about mental health. The fact is, we all have mental health, and we all inevitably experience emotional pain, regardless of what social media and selfies may suggest. I am thrilled that the university is taking steps towards making this a safe and healthy community for all, and I am sitting on the committee to ensure that concerns and views of graduate students are voiced. Along with the Graduate Student Association, I am on the committee to represent graduate student interests, providing feedback to the committee, partnering with other committee members to implement the PAC SMH recommendations, and assist with other initiatives related to student mental health. To ensure that student representatives continue to play meaningful roles on the committee, it is critical that we continue to hear from you, the students, as well as the faculty and staff. My experiences are but one. My voice is shrill and squeaky, and it's important to hear from others as well. As a graduate student, I too understand how, as we get more specific in our studies and our niche research topics, this experience can be isolating as we question our level of expertise. Although there may be individual variations in our experiences, there is sameness in our differences as a graduate student. By sharing with student representatives about your own experiences or any feedback that you may have regarding the recommendations, you can help to drive the implementation process and create a safer and healthier community for all.
Thank you very much, Megan. You may have spoken only with one voice, but I think we'd agree it was a very powerful and authentic one today, and I'm sure was inspiring to other members of the audience and anyone else who hears. So thank you very much for your service on the committee. I'd like to invite Faradin and John to come forward for the next portion of the program, which is the signing of the Okanagan Charter. Adopting the Okanagan Charter was one of the 36 recommendations in the Committee Student Mental Health final report, as has previously been mentioned. This represents a significant transition for the university, as we'll be moving to a perspective in which mental health and wellness is the responsibility, from the responsibility of a few professionals identified with that, to an environment in which a healthy campus becomes the business of all the stakeholders of the university. And that's one of the things that's embodied in the principles of the Okanagan Charter. So this affords us with the opportunity to support this transition, and so although it is symbolic, it's also very meaningful and commits us to that transition in philosophy. So I would turn it over to the signees. You may. He doesn't ask my permission for everything. Yeah, you can stay. We're going to move to the question and the answer portion of the event now. We have time for a few questions from the floor, and I'd invite the other speakers to come forward for this portion as well. We'll have the time for a few questions in here, and we have some microphones that will facilitate that. So I just ask that you wait for a microphone runner to come to you if you indicate a question by raising your hand. It won't be your last opportunity, because the next portion in the atrium is designed for members to have access to, committee members to carry on discussions as part of that program. So I think, where are the microphone folks? Okay, great. I'm going to take a seat over here and hopefully be able to identify those who are interested in asking a question and try to moderate a little bit. The one right in front, right here in the front.
Okay. Hello. Thank you so much for all of you for your time speaking today and for leaving this forum open for attendance. My name is Pat Duong, and I'm an undergraduate student. And my question is, with the signing of this paper, what kind of change management is being done after the adaptation of this charter in order to, because it's one thing to sign a piece of paper, but another thing to keep it in mind for every single decision made regarding students. So what kind of change management is being done in the adaptation or adoption of this charter that were just signed?
So the way to think about the charter, in part, is a commitment to ourselves. So in the charter that we've signed, that Ferryden signed on behalf of the university today, there's a series of statements about commitments that we've made. One of the commitments is that we'll always apply a mental health and a wellness lens to the university's thinking, whether it be thinking about how we set up our strategic plan, how we formulate policies, and how we do our day-to-day operations. So it's a commitment to ourselves to purposely bring that into our day-to-day business. How do you actually enforce and manage that? That's sort of a difficult question. I think it's it's one of the things that we're looking for to set a stage to change culture in university, to always be mindful of the need to think about mental health and wellness as part of everything that we do. And this is the first major step in acknowledgement of doing that.
I guess the other thing I'd add, if you look at the items of the commitments, one of them is the establishment of a health promotion collaborative, which is something we're going to be getting going very quickly, which will engage a number of people in exactly what you're talking about, change management, looking at what things are we already doing that are health promoting, and what things can we be doing, and what can we learn from other universities.
Right in the middle.
Yeah, no.
Can you hear me? Yep. Yeah? Okay. This is exciting. I'm excited by this. And I see there's a lot of initiatives being undertaken for things that we can add into the mix, things that we can create and things that we can do and people that we can hire. But I have a question, I guess, about the cultural change, and that question is, what are the things that we already do that we need to actually do differently, right? So what are some of the ways that we implement curriculum or orient our students or organize our assessments and readings and all of the things that make students so incredibly anxious? Are there things that we will need to undo and unbuild as much as there are things that we will need to add on? Any of you can address that.
Maybe I'll start. I think in the first little while, we have to remind ourselves that everything we do we give enough consideration to mental health, well-being, and student mental health first, with the hope that after a while it will become an integral part of the culture of this university and the environment. So this is from short to long-term plan. We are talking about a number of things. They are well reflected in 36 recommendations. If you put them all together, this is what eventually, hopefully, will become our culture, that we put the students' well-being together with their success first. And this is what we're hoping. There will be certain things that we will debate, we will discuss. I don't think that we will get it right 100% in the beginning, but if we start with some right steps, and I'm quite certain that at the end, we will have a campus that will put the lens first, and whether it's strategic planning, whether it's curriculum revision, whether it's co-op work terms, I think we will put those lenses in front of us and make sure that we are not deviating from it. With the way this has been going, I'm quite hopeful, certain that this is going to become the norm on this campus.
One of the things that I might add as chair of the implementation committee is I'm actually very grateful for the excellent work that the President's Advisory Committee on Student Mental Health did in formulating those recommendations. If you look through the set of recommendations, they're really comprehensive and interesting in terms of what they cover. There's some that are very high-level recommendations around culture change, which are going to be a little bit more challenging to sort of to change and shape. Many are very operational in nature, dealing with some of the issues that you've raised about how exams are done, how co-op is scheduled, and then others are around health services and training. And what I found when I looked through the recommendations, from the perspective of the person who's going to chair the committee to implement them, is they were very rational, clearly thought out recommendations that felt doable. There wasn't something in that set of 36 that I thought there's just no way we're going to be able to pull this off. And the great thing is the university's put resources, and we've pulled a committee together that really has, I think, the ability and the commitment to making each one of those recommendations happen.
I would add just a very, very brief comment to support what's been said, and as a little bit of a sign of the permeation of the ideas and moving forward on the issues that you raise, is that the conversations around this issue aren't restricted to the Advisory Committee on Student Mental Health. It's become very apparent as we're halfway through the consultation phase for the strategic planning process that these items are coming up in a wider audience as well. So. Reflection. Other questions? Just back here.
So I'm Justin. So I am actually a undergraduate student, just finishing off my social work placement at St. Paul's. My question is surrounding the utilization of universal design for learning and instruction, and how that can be implemented across the board to enable every student to reach their full potential. And what's your thoughts on that, as making it almost a requirement rather than suggestions for professors to follow?
Yeah, so that's one of the direct recommendations that's there, to implement universal design and course design. So we'll work with the Center for Teaching Excellence to help us give us some advice of how do we turn that from a recommendation into a real implementation. It's a big change to introduce. If you think of the number of courses that are taught on campus, will we get 100% of professors doing it 100% of the time? Maybe not, but if we can make it a dominant sort of expectation education, I think we'll make good progress in that way. But it's very clear that's one of the things we're committed to doing.
The advantage is actually, STEM is actually more willing to adopt a universal design than the arts, which is, it's nice for the university with it being focused a lot on STEM versus the arts. So it's a progression that we can hopefully see fast.
That will be another debate, whether university puts more emphasis on STEM than arts, but we'll leave it to a different day.
A couple of more questions I think we have time for. Over here.
My name is Myron Steinman. I'm an alumni with General Arts. I just got this information today, but I believe that the University of Waterloo is not part of the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. Is that correct? I would like to applaud them if they are not. My understanding is that as of October 23rd, our Honorable Premier has introduced legislation that does not include stripping members of domestic abuse protections and high heel level laws. So our Premier is not in favor of, it used to be in Bill 148 that an employer could require a woman to wear high heels. Our Honorable Premier, I believe, has repealed that in Bill 147, but the Ontario Chamber of Commerce is in favor of the full repeal of the Bill 148. Is the University of Waterloo a member of the Ontario Chamber of Commerce? Or are you aware of any of my information? I know there's a lot of misinformation out there, but this is just from my emails this morning.
I think I can answer that simply, no, we're not a member of Chamber of
There are a number of universities in Ontario and colleges that are, as of today anyway, still they didn't respond to the Ontario Chamber of Commerce's. Ontario Chamber of Commerce, as of today, wants to repeal Bill 148 in full, which includes those two messages. Thank you.
So I know when we have these conversations around student mental health, there's always a lot of looking at how much there is to do and how much progress there is still to make. I guess I just want to ask for anybody who wants to take it, what's one thing that you've seen in the last year that's given you the most hope for moving forward?
I don't mind taking that question. I'm sure others might. I think the question was, what's one thing that's given us hope? Is that what you're asking them? Yeah. And honestly, it's going to sound a little bit trite, but events like this, I referred earlier to March 14th, to the town hall, to the tremendous engagement. I think I learned almost more in the hour after that with the students in particular who came up and wanted to talk and wanted to give their comment and their suggestions. And it just, for me anyhow, opened my eyes to how much commitment there is on this campus and engagement to make these improvements. Very heartening.
I think just go.
Alrighty. Okay. For me personally, one thing that I saw in the work that's been done so far that's been really inspiring is just the formation of the Committee on Student Mental Health and seeing all the different representatives come from different parts of campus and really passionately, like genuinely being engaged in the topic and really being committed to seeing how we can improve the services on campus. Just being in a room with a bunch of really smart and passionate people and really committed people who are all working towards the same goal. For me, at least, it's been really heartening, first of all, and it's just made me really optimistic for the future of Waterloo and the future of the services that we're going to be improving on providing.
I actually started my university career in 2004. I won't let people do the math on that, or I'll let you do the math. But I've not had a linear trajectory, so to speak. And I guess for what I find hopeful is that this would not have occurred in 2004. This openness of dialogue, this commitment as a university moving forward, the Okanagan Charter signing, this to me speaks volumes. There's no doubt that there's a lot to be done, but I think the willingness to move forward as a community in a whole is pretty positive in my view.
Matthew, if I could let's switch. Add a few more words. There's always hope. If there's no hope, you won't move forward. But on that Sunday morning, whole morning this was my head. Sat down, sent John an email. 5 minutes later, the answer was there. Absolutely, don't worry about the details. The answer is yes. There couldn't be a better sign for hope that, hey, we're gonna be fine. When you have, I'm not exaggerating, dozens and dozens of emails from people saying that I want to help, I want to be part of this, I want to participate in this. These are all fantastic signals of hope that, look, we never claimed that we got this right, but we are moving in a direction that I think it will be the right direction, and we're doing this not just with just a few of us, we're doing this as an entire campus. This is, I believe, the greatest signal for hope.
Well, maybe I'll just add one more comment. Since I took on this role as chair of COSM, I've been struck by the level of interest in what we're doing outside of Canada. As part of my research, I travel a great deal. I do a lot of research in other countries, and I could say since my appointment, at least in 5 different countries, people have said, we really care about student mental health. We want to know about what University of Waterloo is doing. So this is a worldwide issue. It's not just a Waterloo issue. Everybody is struggling with how do we support students to do well and succeed in their work. And as others have said, I'm just amazed by the level of commitment all the way from the newest student on campus to the most senior levels of the university. Everybody wants to do this well. We're all there in this together, so it's really exciting to be part of this.
I think I got the signal we have time for one more question, so I think that we already have somebody in possession of the microphone.
So many of us across the campus community are very keen to be engaged in doing something, but it also makes sense to have a coordinated approach, I think perhaps led by the community. And I guess I'm wondering what your recommendations are for next steps, like in terms of how do we wait for you to get to a certain stage with the recommendations, et cetera? Thank you.
Well, I would say don't wait. Take a look at the recommendations that are there, and you can take a look at where we've tried to rank them in terms of what we're working on for our agenda. But don't be shy. Reach out to any of the members that are on the COSM committee. Let us know what you're interested in, and especially let us know what you want to work on. Because our model isn't that COSM will do all the work. We're in some ways a bridging committee connecting with people with expertise and enthusiasm from across campus. So if there's stuff that you want to help with, let us know, because that's part of what we're trying to do, is to mobilize those resources on campus.
Okay. Well, thanks once again for joining this portion of the program. At this time, I'd like to invite everyone to participate in the open house portion of the event, which occurs in the atrium. You'll find stations around the perimeter of the room that are each hosted by representatives from groups concerned with student mental health on campus. It's your opportunity to learn how each of those groups functions and their roles and contributions, as well as how they're supporting recommendations that fall out of the report. And finally, as you're anticipating, this does conclude the formal portion of the event. But please remember, there's the atrium, but of course, even the atrium portion isn't the end of this conversation about student mental health. So please keep that conversation going, not only today in the atrium, but well into the future through some of the mechanisms that John and others have identified, and whatever other venues that we can come to establish. The committee will be updating the website, which is uwaterloo.ca, mental health wellness, to include a way to submit feedback to the committee. So please visit that website, as John indicated earlier, over the coming days and weeks to connect with your committee to represent your own thoughts and provide your feedback in that way. So I'll end by just thanking you all for participating today and hoping to see you in the atrium immediately after this. Thank you very much.